Before you start developing with Xcode, you may want to take a few minutes to customize its behavior to better suit your preferences. Let's open Xcode's preferences and see what we can customize. I'll go up to the Xcode menu and select Preferences. And on the General tab, you'll find some general settings for Xcode. Probably the most interesting to customize would be some of its navigation behavior. By default, single-clicking on an item will open it up in the primary editor, and holding down the Option key while clicking an item will open it up in the Single Assistant editor. And we can change that behavior, so we could open in a separate tab or open in a separate window. And by default, double-clicking a file will open it up in a separate window, but we can change that as well. So if we want to make it the same as the single-click behavior or open up in a separate tab, we can modify that here as well. The Behaviors tab allows you to customize Xcode's behavior as it performs various actions. We can see there are a number of settings we can customize in response to various build, test, run, and find events. So for instance, if I highlight build succeeds, we can see that the currently configured behavior is to show a bezel alert. So let me just switch back to Xcode and hit Command B. This will build the project. And you can see we get this little bezel window that indicates that the build succeeded. We can change this behavior. So if I wanted to, in addition to showing the bezel alert, I want to play a sound, I can highlight that, switch back, hit Command B. Wow! I'm sure your teammates will love you if you select that as your option. I'll switch over to the Fonts and Colors tab. From here you can see we can select different themes. We can also set fonts and colors. We can either do that on an individual feature level, or if you want to select all of them and make them all the same font size, for instance, you can go up to the Edit menu and highlight Select All, and then you can configure your font settings as you'd like. Similarly, we can also change our console settings as well from here. Under the Text Editing menu, we can change various aspects of our code editor. So I'll slide this over to the right just a little bit. And we can toggle on line numbers, toggle those off. We can also change our code folding ribbon. So if I highlight this, you'll see that show up and disappear in the editor. Let me just switch to Xcode real quickly and I'll show you this code folding in action. So as we highlight over little sections of the code, we can collapse and expand those. This can be nice if you're working with a large file and you want to get some of the uninteresting aspects of the code out of the way. But we can enable and disable that as we want to. You can also turn on the page guide. So if you want to show an 80-column marker or any particular width you might want to set, you can define that here. There are also a number of code completion settings that you can define. My recommendation is to leave those on their default settings, but over time, play with these settings and see what works best for you. Change some indentation behavior. By default, it's using spaces. I prefer tabs, so I typically switch that over to tabs. Down at the bottom, there's some syntax-aware indenting behavior you can modify. On the Key Bindings tab, we can set various key bindings for various actions that you can take within Xcode. One of the nice things about Xcode is virtually every action that it can take can have a keyboard shortcut assigned to it. Now, they're not all bound by default, but you can customize this as you'd like. For instance, one particular behavior that I use frequently that isn't bound is under the Edit menu, Sort, and there's a sort either by name or by type. And you can see there's currently no keyboard shortcut assigned to these. I can search in here for that sort action, highlight it, and if I double click, I can assign a keyboard shortcut. Now if I go back under the Edit menu and look at my sort command, I'll see the keyboard shortcut that I assigned. Now, we've seen the download section in an earlier video. From here, we can download additional components and documentation sets. I do recommend that you always have check for and install updates automatically selected. That way, as Apple pushes out new updates, those can automatically download in the background and be installed for you. The Locations tab allows us to adjust various file system locations that Xcode uses. Drive data is where Xcode creates its build artifacts. Snapshots are various point-in-time snapshots you can take of Xcode. And archives are what we use when we produce builds for the App Store. If you want to modify the locations for any of those, you can do so through here. If our application is using source code that doesn't exist within our project but exists elsewhere on our file system, we can set those here as well. I'd recommend experimenting with the different customization options so you can make Xcode best fit the way you like to work.